Hi, welcome to On the 250 River with Dr. Dan. I'm Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions, and I bid you welcome to our latest episode. This is a special one in the sense of it's a Thanksgiving episode. So my last written entry for Americanism Redux was last week, November 21st, which would place this coming week's at Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, November 28th. I think for the sake of peace and in my household and everybody else's too, that I'm going to forego a written entry for this week as we gear up for celebrating Thanksgiving on the day. And I hope it's a great holiday for you and your loved ones and friends. It's certainly a very special time of year. Let's say thank you to a sponsor, returning sponsor John Boyd, merchant in Baltimore. John Boyd has a new shipment in from England of herbs, and he has herbs for three uses. Herbs for cooking, you're going to want to stop by. Herbs for perfume, if you want yourself or your loved one or anything around you to smell better, let's get over to John Boyd's and see what he can sell us at a reasonable price and an effective perfuming product. And then third, he's got spices for medical and healthcare reasons. Speaking of medical and healthcare, he also has a variety of medical equipment available for purchase at his shop in Baltimore. He's telling you to get there as fast as you can because a non-importation agreement or clampdown is coming. This may be the last shipment he gets in for a while. He doesn't know. He's preparing for it. He wants you to prepare for it too by getting to his shop as fast as you can. Now, he does make an interesting statement in his advertisement, and he wants me to share it with you, which is, I mean to continue my importation by every opportunity conformable to any general restriction that may yet take place. It's an interesting way of saying it, don't you think, by Mr. John Boyd? I mean to continue my importations by every opportunity conformable to any general restriction that may yet take place. Close quote. Thanks to John Boyd for his 99% factual, 1% fiction sponsorship of this episode of On the 250 River with Dr. Dan. Now, regarding the entry from last week, November 21st, please go to the website, historicalsolutions.com. You're going to see it there under Americanism Redux. I'll only tell you this, there's some interesting stories there, individual stories. I'll only say this about it, which is there's the fascinating dynamic that the future looks more clear than the present does. Let me explain, which is I want war to come. Looks like war is going to come. That's clarity for the future. I don't want war to come. And yet it looks like war could come. That's clarity for the future. So whether it's positive or negative, the future has a certain clarity to it. What's unknown and unclear and kind of cloudy in varying shades of gray is the present and the near-term future. What's out there, longer term, war possibly, that looks pretty evident. But everything between now and then is just a mess and a jumble of we don't know what all. Boycotts and enforcement of boycotts. There's some military units taking shape. There's people praying for war, praying for peace, saying don't pray at all, and so on. And it's just a mess. The present in people's minds in late November of 1774, it's just total turbulence. As I said, the future has clarity. It's the present that's the problem. Don't know how that feels to you now in our late November of 250 years later in 2024. So take a look at the entry. You'll see what I mean and some specific examples on Americanism Redux on my website, historicalsolutions.com. But I want to get to something else. We are now 3 weeks hence, is that right? Hence, afterwards, from our own presidential election of 2024. And it brings me to a point that I want to take a bit of a pause for the remainder of our few minutes together here in this particular episode and tell you a little bit more or remind you or underscore why it is I'm doing what I'm doing. You may recall, I'm a huge believer in the idea that the past and history rhyme. They rhyme within themselves. They don't repeat. They don't have mirror images like when you hold a mirror up and you see everything that's looking into it. They don't do that, but they do rhyme. They have kind of rhythmic patterns to them with quite a few similarities, but some important differences too. The similarities help make the rhyme, but the differences can add to the rhyme. Let's go back for just a second to 100 years ago. So I have done a lot of work, you may remember some of this, on the pandemic. There was a pandemic 104 years ago. They're coming out of a pandemic, an influenza pandemic. They're coming out of a world struggle called World War I. They have a president, kind of older looking, visually older looking, a little bit on the frail side, president who pledges a return to normalcy. We're going to get normal again after this period of turbulence. That president does not make it to a second term. Would have, wanted to, but didn't make it to seek a second term. In the case of that president, the frailty resulted in death, the death of Warren Harding. Vice president becomes a very significant figure. V. POTUS steps into the White House and then runs in his own right for election against an opponent. Interesting similarities, aren't there? Interesting rhymes with our own situation. There's a general prosperity that had gone away, but has now kind of come back. That's not exactly a rhyme. But there's a tremendous emphasis on pleasure and distraction and satisfying yourself through a variety of ways. Music and vacations and consumerism. There is excitement about technology and scientific developments that nobody had seen before, changes to life from those scientific and technological developments, those changes people hadn't seen before. Back on the distraction side, I want to remind you that the mass events that people hadn't seen before, and heroes in those mass events, like a baseball player named Babe Ruth, a football player named Red Grange, and other kinds of national figures, celebrity figures. There's a motion picture entertainment world people are really just very excited about. That's part of their pleasure and distraction too. We could go on. And another important part of 100 years ago was the idea of Americanism. Now, the worldwide struggle called World War I had produced Americanism. It continued into the middle of the decade as they approached their 150th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It had some good sides to it, had some awful sides to it as well. Those awful sides resulted in resulted in a rise of bigotry, resulted in the rise of racist and bigotry-oriented organizations like the rejuvenation of the Ku Klux Klan, results in the rise of a cult of the lost cause in the old Confederate South, and we can go on and on and on. So Americanism is a vague idea, has some good things, has some bad things to it. Here we are. We are in a situation where Americanism is already here. It's been here for a while, depends on how you define it. It's vague, right? We've got people who define it positively, we have people who define it very negatively. What's going to happen now will be, as we head toward the 250th anniversary of the Declaration, we will see an increase, a proportional increase in the positive side of Americanism. We will see a very sharp reaction to that positive proportional increase of Americanism, a negative Americanism, if you will. What we have to do, and what I'm trying to do with my stories, Americanism Redux, redone, once again, Americanism Redux. What I'm trying to do is offer you individual stories that show you the real side of real people in real life from 250 years ago. I want you to have those stories at hand when you hear what you're going to hear from one side over here, where everything's perfect, and where you're going to hear from the other side over there, where everything's awful and hell and everything else. So my stories are meant to equip you to keep steady, to have clear and consistent and reliable navigation through all of that. I'm Dan Miller. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll look for you then as we all get back from the holiday.